The fluorescent lights of the grocery store felt harsh against my tired eyes as I fumbled with the EBT card at the register. My daughter Emma, barely 3 years old, sat in the cart clutching a box of generic cereal we'd picked out together. The cashier swiped the card without judgment, but I still felt the familiar burn of shame creeping up my neck. "Mommy, can we get the cookies next time?" Emma asked, her voice small and hopeful. "Maybe, sweetheart," I said, knowing next time would likely be the same as this time. Budgeting every dollar, choosing between fruit and meat, making pasta stretch across 4 dinners. "Jennifer." I froze. That voice. I turned slowly to see my grandmother standing 3 feet away, her wire shopping basket hanging from her arm. She wore her Sunday coat even though it was Thursday, and her expression shifted from surprise to something I couldn't quite read. "Grandma," I managed, my hand still gripping the EBT card. "I didn't know you shopped here." She stepped closer, her eyes moving from my face to the card in my hand, then to Emma in the cart. "I come here for their soup bones. Better prices than Safeway." He paused, studying me. "Are you using food stamps, honey?" The question wasn't cruel, but it landed like a slap anyway. I nodded, unable to form words. Her brow furrowed deeply. "But where's the money I've been sending? The $200 every month. It should be helping with groceries at least." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What money?" Grandma's face changed completely. The confusion hardened into something sharper. "The checks, Jennifer. I've sent you $200 on the first of every month since Emma was born. Sometimes I add a little extra for her birthday or Christmas." My mouth went dry. "Grandma, I've never received any checks from you. Not one." She reached out and gripped my arm. "That's impossible. I've sent 24 of them. I have the carbon copies in my checkbook at home." The grocery store sounds faded into white noise. 24 checks. 2 years of support I never knew existed. Support that would have meant fresh vegetables instead of canned, would have meant keeping the heat on instead of bundling Emma in extra blankets, would have meant dignity instead of this plastic card in my hand. "Where did you send them?" I asked quietly. "To your mother's address. You were staying with her when Emma was born and I just kept sending them there. She said she'd make sure you got them." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. I'd moved out of my mother's house 18 months ago, scraping together rent for a tiny apartment across town. But even before that, I'd never seen a single check. "I need to go," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Can you come to Sunday dinner this week?" "At Mom's house." Grandma nodded slowly, understanding flickering in her eyes. "I'll be there." The rest of the week passed in a blur of phone calls and documentation. The post office was my first stop the next morning, Emma in tow because I couldn't afford childcare. The clerk listened to my explanation with practiced patience. "Mail forwarding or redirection requires the recipient's signature," she explained. "If someone filed paperwork to redirect your mail without your knowledge, that's a federal offense. Can you check if anything was filed?" I asked. She disappeared into the back office for 15 minutes. When she returned, her expression was grave. "There's a forwarding order from 2 years ago filed from your mother's address, redirecting any mail for you to remain at that address even after you moved. The signature on file doesn't match your ID." My hands shook as she printed the records. Form 3575. Mail forwarding authorization. My mother's handwriting. A crude attempt at mimicking my signature. 24 months of active mail fraud. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "You can file a complaint with the Postal Inspection Service. This is mail theft and fraud, both federal crimes." I took the papers home and spread them across my small kitchen table. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I called my grandmother. "I went to the post office," I told her. "Mom filed paperwork to keep redirecting my mail to her address. She's been doing it for 2 years." The silence on the other end stretched long. Finally, Grandma spoke, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Bring the papers to Sunday dinner. I want to see her face when you show them." Sunday arrived cold and gray. I dressed Emma in her nicest outfit, a hand-me-down dress from a neighbor's daughter. The post office documents sat in a manila folder in my purse, along with bank statements showing my account balance never rising above $300, evidence of struggle while my mother cashed checks meant for me. My mother's house looked the same as always, fresh paint, manicured lawn, a new car in the driveway. All funded by her job at the medical billing company she'd always said. Looking at it now, I wondered how much of it came from money stolen from her own daughter. Jennifer. She opened the door with her usual bright smile. And Emma. Come here, sweet girl. I let her hug Emma, watching the performance. The doting grandmother, the concerned mother who occasionally slipped me a 20 and told me to budget better. Grandma arrived 10 minutes later, her jaw set in a way I recognized from childhood, the look that meant someone was in serious trouble. We gathered around the dining table. My mother had made pot roast, my childhood favorite. The irony wasn't lost on me. This looks wonderful, Patricia, Grandma said to my mother, her tone neutral. Just wanted to make something nice for family dinner, Mom replied, serving portions onto plates. We ate in tense silence. Emma chattered about her preschool, oblivious to the undercurrents. I barely tasted the food. Finally, Grandma set down her fork. Patricia, I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store on Thursday. My mother's hand paused midway to her mouth. Oh. She was using food stamps with my great-granddaughter in the cart, buying generic cereal and the cheapest cuts of meat. Times are tough for young mothers, my mother said carefully. I help when I can. That's interesting, Grandma continued, because I've been sending Jennifer $200 every month for the past 2 years, to help with exactly those expenses. The color drained from my mother's face. I'm sure there's been some confusion. No confusion. I pulled out the manila folder, my hand steady now. I went to the post office. They have records. I spread the documents across the table. The forwarding forms, the signature that wasn't mine, the dates spanning 24 months. You filed paperwork to redirect my mail, I said quietly. Every check Grandma sent you kept. You cashed them or deposited them while I was feeding my daughter pasta for the 4th night in a row. My mother's mouth opened and closed. I was holding on to them for you. Saving them. Then where are they? Grandma's voice cut like ice. Where's the savings account? Where's the accumulated $4,800? The math hung in the air. 24 months times $200. Nearly $5,000 stolen from a struggling single mother by her own parent. I had expenses, my mother started. You don't understand the costs of maintaining this house. Stop. I cut her off. The post office clerk explained that mail fraud is an issue. So is forging someone's signature on legal documents. So is stealing someone's financial support. My mother's face crumpled, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just exhaustion. I have a 3-year-old daughter, I continued. There were nights I watered down her milk to make it last. I applied for every assistance program available. I donated plasma twice a week for grocery money. And you had $200 of mine every single month. Grandma pulled an envelope from her purse. These are copies of every check I sent. My bank has records of all of them being cashed. I want to see your bank statements, Patricia. You can't just demand that, my mother protested weakly. I can when the alternative is calling the police right now, Grandma replied. You stole from your daughter. You watched her struggle and did nothing while spending money I sent to help her. The silence stretched. Emma had stopped eating, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. My mother stood abruptly and left the room. She returned 5 minutes later with her laptop, her movements jerky and defensive. She pulled up her bank account with trembling fingers. There they were, deposits of $200 regular as clockwork on the 3rd or 4th of every month. Sometimes $250. The Christmas and birthday extras Grandma had mentioned. I was going to give it to her eventually, my mother whispered. I just needed to borrow it temporarily. For 2 years. I asked. You needed to borrow it while I was on food stamps? While I was taking Emma to the free clinic because I couldn't afford a pediatrician. Grandma leaned forward. You have 2 choices, Patricia. You can write Jennifer a check for the full amount right now, plus interest. Or I call the postal inspector tomorrow morning and file a federal complaint. That's extortion, my mother said. No, Grandma corrected. That's me giving you a chance to make this right before the law gets involved. Mail fraud carries up to 5 years in prison. My mother's hand shook as she reached for her checkbook. The pen scratched across the paper. $5,000. Not $4,800 but $5,000. A small penalty, Grandma called it. She tore the check out and slid it across the table to me. I picked it up, looking at the numbers that represented 2 years of struggle that didn't have to happen. I want you to know, I said softly, that I'm not cashing this and pretending everything's fine. This doesn't fix what you did. You let your granddaughter go without while stealing from her. That's who you are. Jennifer, please, my mother started. I'm not done. My voice remained level. I'm filing a report with the post office anyway. Having this check doesn't erase the issue. They need to know in case you've done this to anyone else. And you're not seeing Emma anymore. Not unsupervised, maybe not at all. I can't trust you around my daughter when you'd steal from her future. Grandma stood, picking up her purse. I'll be changing how I send Jennifer money from now on. Direct deposit into an account only she can access. And Patricia, you're not welcome at my house until you've shown genuine change. Not performative apologies. Real change. We left together, Emma between us, holding both our hands. My mother sat alone at her table, surrounded by the dinner she'd made and the family she'd betrayed. The check cleared 3 days later. I paid off 2 months of overdue utilities first. Then I bought Emma new shoes that actually fit. Fresh fruit. Real meat instead of the cheapest ground beef. I even got the cookies she'd asked for. The postal inspector called me in for an interview the following week. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a serious demeanor explained the investigation process. Even with restitution, the issue occurred, she said. We take mail fraud very seriously. Your mother will likely face federal charges. I understand, I said. Does that bother you? She asked gently. She's your mother. I thought about Emma's face when I'd bought her favorite cereal without checking the price. About keeping the heat at a comfortable temperature instead of 62 degrees. About the 2 years of struggle that were engineered by someone who should have protected me. She made her choices, I said. I'm just making sure there are consequences. My grandmother started coming to my apartment for dinner instead. She'd arrive with groceries, insisting she'd bought too much for just herself. The new direct deposit hit my account like clockwork, and I opened a savings account for the first time in Emma's life. 3 months later, my mother was charged with mail fraud and forgery. She took a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and community service. No prison time, but a federal conviction on her record. She called once, crying and asking for forgiveness. I told her I needed time. Maybe years. Maybe forever. Because some betrayals don't heal just because someone says sorry. Some wounds are too deep, cut by the very people who should have been protecting you. I look at Emma now, playing with toys I could finally afford to buy new instead of secondhand. She doesn't remember the food stamp days. She won't grow up knowing what it's like to hear her mother cry quietly in the next room over bills. That's what my grandmother's money was supposed to prevent all along. And now finally it does.